In Peru, social organizations mobilized to reject the presidential vacancy request made by opposition sectors to the parliament. Immigration authorities in Mexico intercepted 143 Central American asylum seekers in the municipality of Huajuapan de León in the state of Oaxaca. Death toll from the eruption of Indonesia's Mount Semeru volcano rose to 34 on Tuesday. Hi, welcome to From the South. I am your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the Telesur studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Peru, while the parliamentary session for the request for a presidential vacancy is advancing, social organizations are mobilizing to reject the request made by opposition congressmen. The Front for Democracy and Governability has called for a march today to demonstrate against a request that aims at President Pedro Castillo's vacancy. The protest takes place while the Congress evaluates whether or not to admit the motion of vacancy presented by Patricia Chirinos, third vice president of the parliament, which had the support of a sector from the opposition. In this context, the social conglomerate accused the legislature of the republic with obstructing Pedro Castillo's administration. The head of the Peruvian parliament, Maria del Carmen Alba, acknowledged on Monday the lack of certainty about the support for a motion to vacate the office of the Peruvian president, Pedro Castillo, and doubted that it would get the necessary votes to be debated. In a televised interview, Alba said that not even the 52 votes needed for the motion presented by three extreme right-wing minority benches to be debated by Congress at Tuesday's plenary session are certain. The head of parliament, close to leaders of the conservative sector of her party, Acción Popular, had declared in September that the street is calling for vacancy. However, she distanced herself from this position in a recent report by the Channel N of Peru. In the event that 52 votes are reached and it is approved, the debate will begin next week, although according to Alba, this would be in doubt. The Colombian parliament voted in favor of censoring the press in that country. With 73 votes in favor and 51 against, Article 68 was approved, establishing that whoever denounces public officials or former public officials could go to prison. The article, added at the last minute in the plenary session of the Senate, established that whoever attempts to attack a public official or former public official by denouncing false acts about him or his family may be sentenced to 60 to 120 months in prison and a fine up to 13,000 minimum wages. The article was described by several congressmen as a fraud. Media organizations and activists in defense of press freedom strongly rejected the proposal, warning it endangers free press and democratic rights in Colombia.
This article is not related to that purpose. It also creates important risks for freedom of speech and opens the door to the liability of legal prisons, which does not exist in Colombia.
The president-elect of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, became the first head of state of the Central American country to get the most votes with 1.4 million, as 80.66% of the November 28th election records are counted. According to the latest update from the National Electoral Council, the leader of Liberty and Refoundation Party added more than 1 million votes, which represented 50.63% compared to the 35.89% for Nasri Asfura from the ruling National Party. Among the other presidents elected since 1981, none of them were able to add even 1.2 million ballots, which contrasted with Xiomara Castro's results. And without finishing counting the vote, the Public Prosecution Office has guarded the facilities of the National Electoral Council, where all electoral materials are processed in case of any violent incidents that may arise. The electoral body reaffirmed elections went smoothly and in accordance with the law. Government authorities in Nicaragua stated the export sheet on Tuesday reached more than $3 million after trading more than 100 goods between January and November. The number, considered as a new record, also showed an interannual growth of more than $5 million, 20% more than in the same period of 2020. The achievement strengthened the forecast of the closing of the gross domestic product between 6 and 9%. Agriculture and livestock goods are among the main traded goods in the Central American nation, with clients in 119 countries. Data from the Central Bank of Nicaragua forecasted an economic growth of 9% as a result of the increase in foreign investments, exports, remittances, the diversification of activities, and tax collection. In Cuba, the Temanu mega yacht became the first private vessel to arrive at the port of Castillo, Trinidad. Its 12 passengers of Spanish nationality toured the colonial area of the third Cuban villa, which is also a World Heritage Site. This Monday, the tourist boat was received in Cuba. Sonia Ramirez, head of establishment of the Trinitarian Export, explained that the arrival of the yacht marks a reopening of the southern bay after a stop of nearly 2 years caused by the COVID-19, and also since these kinds of boats have suffered the provisions of the United States government. Assistance to the site was provided by Immigration and Harbor Master's staff. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. At least 143 Central American migrants were intercepted on Monday by immigration authorities when they remained in the back of a vehicle in the municipality of Huajuapan de León in the state of Oaxaca in Mexico. The Mexican National Immigration Institute reported that the migrants were intercepted during a search by the authorities in which federal migration agents and state road police took part. They said they heard voices coming from the back of the vehicle, so they quickly opened its doors and found the migrants crammed together. They confirmed that 141 were citizens from Guatemala and another 2 from Nicaragua. The driver and co-driver of the vehicle that was transporting them were handed over to the prosecutor's office to begin an investigation into the facts. And the government of Bolivia revealed on Sunday that the de facto administration of Janine Áñez had requested a supply of arms from foreign powers a few weeks after the victory of Luis Arce in the elections that reestablished the democratic path in the South American country. The request was made to authorities and suppliers in the United States and United Kingdom. The Vice Minister of Citizen Security, Roberto Rios, who showed the letters of the request in an official speech, pointed out that the supplies would presumably be used in actions of repression of the people in the event of popular unrest. The request for supplies was made at a time when a second coup d'etat was being prepared with the participation of foreign mercenaries, renegade police squads, and mobs of vigilantes seeking to prevent, even by assassination, Luis Arce from assuming the presidency.
We would also like to mention they have made a request for equipment and arms to the American and British embassies 3 weeks before the general election in 2020.
Well, it's official, people, brace yourselves. Argentina confirmed its first case of the Omicron variant of coronavirus in a traveler from South Africa on Sunday. The health ministry informed that the 38-year-old patient has been in isolation since his arrival and underwent a PCR test before and after arriving in the country, which was negative in both cases.
It scares me a lot because we have already experienced the issue of COVID, of being locked up and everything. And the truth is that this situation is very complicated. But let's hope that it won't be like the one that left, the variant.
It doesn't seem to have too much importance or danger, so the truth is that I'm not worried at all. Plus I'm vaccinated, and I've had both doses. A lot of times the media spreads fear too much, and that scares people. So it seems to me that first you have to base yourself on the scientific evidence, and then take the necessary precautions.
Cuba is on alert due to the resumption of tourist activities on the island and the appearance of Omicron, the new variant of COVID, which World Health Organization authorities have classified as cause for concern. No cases have been reported on the island so far. Health authorities report that Delta is still the most widely detected variant in the world. Omicron is the 5th variant of the coronavirus and still generates a lot of uncertainty and is still under investigation by world authorities regarding its characteristics, especially its level of contagion and virulence. Without a doubt, the governing body of health on the island reiterated that preventing the Omicron variant from reaching Cuba is a challenge for health authorities. For this reason, the detection of cases is a vital task in a country that has seen a decrease in the number of active cases for almost 11 weeks.
Among the measures that were established was to resume PCR sampling here at the airport, Firstly, aimed to travelers coming from 7 countries that had already reported the presence of Omicron, including South Africa, Lesotho, Botswana, Swaziland. Secondly, Cuba is reinforcing epidemiological surveillance in the airport, thus reinforcing the presence of surveillance on all the crew once they arrive, which is the first line of surveillance. Then also reinforcing in this position where we are today, which is the second line of surveillance and the third line of surveillance, which is after customs.
The mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, on Monday announced a blanket COVID-19 vaccine mandate for the private sector in the United States' biggest cities starting from late December. The order extends further than a nationwide mandate set by President Joe Biden for companies with more than 100 employees to vaccinate workers by January 4th that has been stalled by court suspensions. Vaccine mandates have a long history in the U.S. but have generally been issued by cities or states. The mayor cited the emergence of the COVID-19 Omicron variant, cold winter weather, and holiday gatherings as additional challenges to tackling the pandemic in New York, which was hard hit by the virus in 2020 with at least 34,000 deaths. Omicron cases have been confirmed in at least 15 U.S. states so far, several of them in New York.
It's time. Look, this is how we put health and safety first, by ensuring that there is a vaccine mandate that reaches everyone universally in the private sector. A lot of folks in the private sector have said to me they believe in vaccination, but they're not quite sure how they can do it themselves. Well, we're going to do it. We're going to do this so that every employer is on a level playing field. One universal standard starting December 27th. Part of the past, we cannot let those restrictions come back. We cannot have shutdowns here in New York City. We got to keep moving forward. And the answer, as always, is to use the things that work. Vaccination works, and vaccine mandates work.
This is just really shocking. The global arms industry is flourishing despite COVID, as revealed in a report published on Monday. Sales of arms and military services by the industry's 100 largest companies totaled 470 billion euros in 2020, representing an increase of 1.3% in real terms compared with the previous year, according to new data released by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. This marked the 6th consecutive year of growth in arms sales by the top 100. Arms sales increased even as the global economy contracted by 3.1% during the first year of the pandemic. In much of the world, military spending grew, and some governments even accelerated payments to the arms industry in order to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 crisis. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The death toll from the eruption of Indonesia's Mount Semeru volcano rose to 34 on Tuesday. The biggest mountain on the island of Java on Saturday ejected a mushroom of volcanic ash into the sky and rained hot mud as thousands of people fled their homes. According to the National Disaster Agency, so far 34 people died and 17 are missing as aid was rushed to the affected region. Rescuers have been battling dangerous conditions since the deadly weekend eruption, searching for survivors and bodies in the volcanic debris. Officials have advised locals not to travel within 5 kilometers of Semeru's crater, as the nearby area is highly polluted and could affect vulnerable groups. Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the meeting of continental plates causes high volcanic and seismic activity. Syria's military confirmed on Tuesday that Israeli fighter jets fired missiles on the Syrian port of Latakia, damaging containers but without inflicting casualties. Officials said several missiles struck the container area in the port, setting some of them on fire. Latakia is Syria's main commercial facility through which food and other important supplies flow into the country. While Israel has frequently targeted what it describes as Iranian interests in the nation, including positions where Lebanon's Hezbollah fighters have been deployed, the attack on Latakia is seen as highly irresponsible. Some of the strikes in the past have targeted the main airport in the capital, Damascus. Israel used Iranian presence on its northern frontier as a red line, justifying its strikes on facilities and weapons inside Syria. And now the Saudi-led coalition fighting in Yemen bombed military targets in the capital Sana'a after the Iran-aligned Houthis launched ballistic missiles and armed drones into Saudi Arabia, including at Aramco oil facilities in Jeddah. The violence has escalated dramatically over the last months, despite efforts by the United Nations to engineer a ceasefire in the 7-year-old war that has caused a dire humanitarian crisis. A statement from the coalition said they conducted precision strikes on legitimate military targets in Sana'a, and in the last 24 hours also struck Houthi targets in Marib and Juf. A Houthi military spokesman had earlier said the group fired several ballistic missiles and used 25 armed drones in attacks on Saudi targets, including an Aramco oil facility in Jeddah and the defense ministry in the capital Riyadh. There were no reports of casualties or significant damage from the strikes. The war has killed tens of thousands, predominantly civilians, and pushed Yemen to the brink of famine. A 3-story apartment building collapsed this Tuesday in a suspected gas explosion on southern France. The residential block came crashing down overnight in Semeru near Toulon. Rescue workers dug out the body of a man in his 30s, but also pulled out a toddler and the child's mother alive from the rubble. The blast, thought to be as a result of a gas problem, was heard for miles around. Authorities for the southern Var region earlier said that one person was also pulled out from the building in critical condition, and 3 others required emergency medical treatment following the blast. Firefighters continued the search for 2 people believed to be still trapped in the debris.
Five people were evacuated before we arrived, meaning they got out on their own. And then we have 5 people who were a priori under the rubble. Out of these 5 people, we pulled 2 out, the baby and his mother, who are alive as I speak.
It's the old center of Sanary, but there has never been this kind of problem. In any case, whether you put in new or old buildings, if there is an explosion, let's wait for the result of the investigation to find out.
Speaking at the opening day of the 2-day Dakar International Forum on Peace and Security on Monday, Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum urged his country's allies to step up the fight against arms trafficking from Libya, which he said is fueling insurgency in the Sahel region. The president warned that the terrorist groups currently operating in the Sahel have sophisticated weapons and ammunition in large quantities, which are acquired at very low cost through Libyan smuggling networks. Niger, along with Mali and Burkina Faso, is struggling with a devastating campaign by extremists that began in northern Mali in 2012. The bloodshed has claimed thousands of civilian and military lives, forced hundreds of thousands from their homes, and dealt crippling economic blows to countries that already ranked among the poorest in the world. The region's former colonial power, France, is leading European efforts to fight the jihadists, a presence rejected by much of the population in the affected countries, while the United Nations has a large peacekeeping force in Mali.
The partners' biggest failure has been their weak involvement in the fight against arms smuggling from Libya, which is the most important factor in the prevalence of this terrorism. They, the African states, also need, and this is important, better tailored help from their partners, based on intelligence, air support, and strengthening the capacities of their armed forces.
Are we leaving the Sahel? Absolutely not. The whole purpose of this transformation is to move toward more cooperation. Our goal is not to act in place of the Sahel states. Our goal is to act with them.
We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website, Tell Us Our English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, and Instagram. For Tell Us Our English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.